The mother was like a vine in thy blood. Thy mother, talking about Judah. Now, what I want you to do, now the key to this, ladies and gentlemen, is verse 1. I want you to take up a lamentation for the princes of Israel. Now, they're the ones I want you to preach to. I want you to preach to the governor, to the senators, to the aldermen, the big boys. That's what he said. We can't do that. We haven't got enough of nerve to preach to the sisters in the congregation, let alone get out here and preach to somebody else. But look at here. Thy mother was like a vine. In thy blood planted by the waters, it was fruitful and full of branches by reason of many waters. Now, that's what God did. God planted the Jews in a most fertile land and had strong rods. He gave them good leaders. Now, ladies and gentlemen, listen to me. You don't find a general greater than Moses. You don't find one greater than Joshua. You just can't find any man that had more ability than Saul until he got eat up with his own pride. And David and Solomon, why, these were great men. They were leaders. They were administrators. The Jews had them. Now, God said that they had rods for scepters of them that bear rule, and their statute was exalted above the high boughs, and they were seen in their height with a multitude of their branches. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what am I doing? I'm saying that the only practical lesson that we can derive from these prophets is to make application to the church. Now, you don't need to say that we haven't had good leaders in the church. Don't tell me that we haven't had educated men. We've had men that were strong. We've had good debaters, and we've had good preachers, and we've had good administrators. Now, if you don't believe it, get out here and drive up and down the street and look at these plants, as they call it. Why, the last president of David Lipscomb College raised $8 million in one day. Now, don't tell me the man hadn't got ability. I've got a friend out here in south of town that's preaching in the congregation. The contribution is $17,000 to $20,000 a week. Now, don't tell me they're not good administrators. We've got a bunch out here at Madison that has 9,000 people when they want to have a Super Sunday. Don't tell me they don't have administrators. I got another friend down here at Rivergate that just constructed a building worth $2.5 million. Don't tell me they don't have ability. You've got to have ability to do that. Now, don't tell me that. I've never said that my brethren were a bunch of ignoramuses. If they used half the sense they got to preach God's law, the church would be on the move. Now, God said that our rulers, these rods that came out of these branches, were good. And the same thing is true with the ability that we have. The ministers of the Church of Christ take a back seat to nobody when it comes to intelligence. But ladies and gentlemen, they have gone wicked. They're doing evil in God's sight, just like these kings did. What are they doing? They're trusting to their own power, just like these kings were. God said, you'll be strong as long as you believe in me. You see that? Now, I can be a strong preacher if I let God work through me, but the moment I get to believing that I'm the strong one, I'm nothing. And this is what's wrong with us. We've turned our sights inward, and we're standing back just like the rich farmer. And we get out in the road and we look at these buildings and say, look what I did. We had $2,000. We had a $20,000 contribution. We have just built a $2.5 million building. Look what we have done. God said, you've done nothing. You've absolutely done nothing. Now, don't tell me that I didn't plant you. Why, Nashville, Tennessee, and Middle Tennessee is a fertile place. God has been good to the churches around here. You know he's been good. 35 years ago, we had 150 congregations right here. We've got Christian academies surrounding this place. Don't tell me that the God of heaven has not been good to the Church of Christ. Ladies and gentlemen, what happened? Our leaders have gotten evil, and they've gone wrong. They've gone wicked because they're looking to themselves. Our Christian colleges were a wonderful thing until they supplanted the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ. It was a wonderful thing when they were auxiliaries to the church, but now they have become the main thing, and the church is auxiliary to them. I don't believe any such thing. Ladies and gentlemen, the very same thing is true with our buildings. Buildings are a wonderful thing when we simply use them as an adjunct to the church. But when they got to the power that they usurped the authority of the church, and we began to look to this brick and mortar and to these $1,000,000 structures, then, ladies and gentlemen, it's wrong. And the God of heaven said, I'll send up nations about you, and they'll throw a net over you, and they'll take you in hooks, and they'll send you down into Egypt. Now, that's exactly what happened. 10,000 members in the last 10 years, 20 years, left the Church of Christ. What's happened to your big buildings? What's happened to your big contribution? Ladies and gentlemen, it's not holding people because the banner said we've lost 10,000 of our members. God said, I'll bring up something and I'll destroy you. There's never been anything like the city of Jerusalem. There's never been anything as gorgeous and as beautiful as that great temple that Solomon built. But God said, I'll destroy it to the ground. When the disciples took Jesus out and said, I want you to look at this temple that Herod built, Jesus said, I'm not impressed with your martyr. I'm not impressed with your stone. I'm going to tell you that this whole thing will be torn down. It'll be torn down in your lifetime. My friends, I'm here to tell you, and believe it or don't believe it, take it or reject it, I'm here to tell you that we're in for a collapse, and we're collapsing right under our eyes. And the brethren haven't got enough of sense to see it. Now, when are we going to start preaching like Ezekiel was told to preach? When are we going to lift our voice in opposition to the wickedness? Just exactly like God told Ezekiel to lift his voice against these princes. Now, the only reason I don't call them by name is because I agreed with the radio station that I wouldn't call personal names. Ladies and gentlemen, I can draw you a picture. When I'm talking about the last president of David Lifton College, you know who I'm talking about. And when I talk about this big mess out here at Madison, you know who I'm talking about. You had a man out there that was interested in nothing but himself. And he built himself and self and self. And what happened to it? He run the church in the ground. And that ungodly outfit out there is as responsible as anything in the brotherhood in the last 50 to 100 years in causing the innovations to come in. Now, we know it. I know it. Someone said, but Brother Ruddy was a big man. Yes, so was Jehoiakim. But God brought him down. And so was his son. But God put a net over him. And so was his grandson. God said Nebuchadnezzar put his eyes out. And that's what's happening to the church today. These are good lessons. Now, don't tell me these are not good lessons. Don't tell me this is not good preaching. Ezekiel was laying the law down. Look at here. And what will happen, verse 12, but it was plucked up. What was plucked up? I'm talking about that city and that temple and all of that good stuff that you had. It was plucked up and it was cast to the ground. And the east wind dried up its fruits. I'm talking about Babylon. And a fire is gone out of the rods of its branches. The whole thing was burned to the ground. Now, ladies and gentlemen, are you and I, listen to me, are you and I going to sit on the sideline and watch the God of heaven burn us to the ground? Are you going to see the churches of the Lord Jesus Christ right here in Middle Tennessee go the way of the world? Now, don't tell me it won't happen. They don't even have a church of Christ in Jerusalem. And at one time, they converted 3,000 as a result of one sermon. And later on, 5,000. And in 40 years, 100,000 members of the Church of Christ in Jerusalem. We don't even have one there now. The Apostle Paul went up in Asia Minor and planted congregations in practically every town you can read about them. They don't have any churches over there now. Why? Because they went the way of the world. I don't care how many churches of Christ we've had in Nashville, Tennessee. And I don't care how powerful the Lord's church may have been in Middle Tennessee. We have gone wicked. We have gone evil. And we have transgressed God's law. And God said, I'll bring an east wind and dry you up. And we haven't got enough of sense to see it. We haven't got enough of sense to see it. It's right here knocking on our doors. And God and Don Rudd, like Ezekiel, is lifting his voice and saying, brethren, are you going to sit here all day and night and watch the armies come up here and destroy the churches of Christ? Are you going to demand that little preacher begin to preach? And are you preachers out there going to demand the brethren begin to live and to get in or to get out? One or the other. Now, what are you going to do? I listen to you. I listen to you every day, and it can't tell you from a sectarian. As a matter of fact, you don't even make a good Baptist. A Baptist wouldn't have you because you're so rotten tickled and good for nothing. You can't even preach as good as the Methodists preach because you're trying to emulate the Methodists and condone the sisters and justify the brethren in their ungodly ways. Why don't you get up here and loosen your collar? And why don't you let your hair down? And why don't you slobber to mouth? And why don't you tell the brethren to amend their ways to get in or to get out? That you're not going to tolerate this stuff. You mean to tell me that you're going to sell your soul out for a measly $150, $200 a week? I'd be ashamed before God. I'd be ashamed before God.